Good evening, friends. We are here with Facebook Live Town Hall. This is our first quarter edition, but really we're going to call it our bond issue edition as well, because this entire town hall will be dedicated to discussing questions about the bond issue. Now, we have a presentation to give to you, but then after that, we're going to take as many questions as you want. We do have a Guardians game on at 7, so we're hoping to wrap up by 7, but we will stay and answer questions. We also want to make sure that folks understand that we have these videos. You're going to see slides tonight, and these videos are also online. So if there's something that we go through too quickly, you can find all of this on YouTube, as well as really an extended explanation if there's still a question that you have. And you can always go to bond issue questions at parmacityschools.org. We will answer all of your questions. We only got one this week, so we're happy about that. We hope that that means that people are actually getting all of the information they need. But again, we're here to answer any questions that you might have. First, when we talk about schools now, safety has become such an important part of what we have to be about. Obviously, there's been too many tragedies, too many incidents to even really speak of, and it's a shame if we have one. But the number we've had has been very daunting. And so when we think about our new schools, we want to make sure that our public understands that we are really dedicated to making these as safe as possible, and building new allows us to do so much better than trying to retrofit buildings that we currently have. So we will have learning pods and grade level wings that we can instantly lock down. That means if somebody's in one section of the building performing some type of heinous act, we can make sure we lock down the other parts of the building right away to cut off access to those other areas. Smaller common areas and cafeterias for improved supervision. We've talked about this being a 9th grade learning community, a 10th grade learning community with their separate dining rooms and their separate office areas for their assistant principals and their counselors and their mental health professionals. That really helps in terms of community feel, also helps in terms of safety, in terms of supervision and how much area we're actually trying to patrol or really have responsibility for at one time. Increased and improved camera coverage of the building. We have many cameras throughout our district, but strategically placing them on new buildings will certainly be an advantage to us. Airlock vestibules, and we show you this here at points of entry, which require staff to unlock 2 sets of doors before entry is permitted. So right now, if you think about how most of our schools are set up, that person sits behind only one door, the person checking IDs, et cetera. So this would allow us to really have a two sets of doors before we would actually allow someone in, making it more secure, making sure that we're identifying everybody before they even set one foot into the building. Now, we are pursuing grants to do that to current buildings, and we are hopeful to get grant money from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. However, right now, most of our schools don't have the 2-lock area. Emergency buttons under desks that can dial emergency services, so you can just press that and it goes right to the police station or 911 or whatever we would configure that as. Exterior doors that feature position switches, which indicate if the door is open. That's a huge one. We cannot possibly do that right now. We have approximately 150 doors just on the first floor of Parma Senior High. That is not how buildings are made now. Buildings are made much safer with really centralized entrances and many fewer doors. Also, again, we don't have the sort of master control system where we can see if a door is open. Most of these doors are same year the building was built, 1953, so we're not able to lock it down as well. Laminated glass and safety film, we have that in some of our areas where we are able to make glass essentially shatterproof, but we would be able to have this in much more glass throughout new structures, new facilities. In terms of funding, this is an expedited local partnership. We're participating in the ELP program, Expedited Local Partnership, which means that we would pay the entire fee up front. That's why the bond issue is $237.5 million. That's the cost of the new high school. Bond issue, I think, is $196 million. We're bridging the gap with COPS, certificates of participation. That was a way to lower the bond ask for you. We saved about $1 million, actually, by using COPS. And what that allows us to do, it's sort of like a home equity line of credit. We're borrowing against our permanent improvement money, and we were able to save from that bond issue approximately $45 million. And so that is a great savings in terms of millage. It's one less mill, essentially, that we're having to ask for. The OFCC is paying for 37% of the cost of co-funded segments. That's an important A piece to mention, co-funded segments means that not everything qualifies for the full 37% reimbursement, so to speak, from the state. For instance, a pool does not. A pool, the OFCC does not deem a pool to be a mandatory part of a school, so we have asked our community to pay for the pool in its entirety. We would not receive 37% back for that facility. That equals $71.9 million credit, and right now we would plan to use that for new elementary schools and new middle schools. Importantly, if there's some other consideration in the district at that point, or the building funds have there is no OFCC anymore. They give us the check, but they say, hey, we don't have any money to pay for your elementaries and middles. We could actually use that to pay down the bond issue as well. Or we could put it into our permanent improvement fund and let it stay there, and then use that for potentially more COPS issues, or to use for specific targeted improvements. So right now the plan would be to use that, take that $71.9 million, put it right to elementary schools, but that also has some flexibility to it if the district decided to do something different. All of these things equal a $3.95 mil bond issue, which is $11.53 per month per $100,000 of the home value. So you can multiply up or down. If you're at $150,000 as your home value, that's 1.5 times, so add about $6 or so to that, so you're at $17.53 per month. We always use $100,000 because it's a nice round number, and most communities do the same. In terms of a timeline, bond issue is right now, 2022. We're approximately 3 weeks away, 3 weeks from tomorrow. 2023 would really become a planning year. That would include more community input. We would actually look to have sort of a parental advisory council. We'll have a business advisory council as well with our chambers of commerce. Those folks are going to try to help us to build buildings that are really maximizing the community assets feature of what we try to have with our facilities. We would also work with a traffic engineer. Folks have asked repeatedly, are you going to have a traffic study? Are you going to have a traffic engineer? That would absolutely be part of how we construct these buildings, this building, I should say. 2024-25 would be construction, and then in September of 2025, right after Labor Day, we would be able to open. So a little bit about community input and what that can look like. We try to, again, engage community residents as well as parents and community members, leaders, business people, all of those people who will have a stake. These are more than just the Parma City Schools buildings. These are our buildings that belong to Parma Heights, Parma, and Seven Hills, and we want to be committed to sharing those. Some learning advantages in terms of why we want to build and what we can really capitalize in terms of making our lives better for our students and for our teachers. One is a state-of-the-art heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems with really remote climate control that is dependable and reliable. And if we say a room is going to be 68 degrees, it's going to be 68 degrees. We don't have that luxury now. And if you talk to folks who live our buildings and are in our buildings, certainly it's a weakness, especially on very hot or very cold days. We often are not able to control that variable as much as really we would be able to in a new school. More advanced placement in College Credit Plus classes. I always give this example. Think about advanced biology. We have 3 campuses right now. Well, let's take next year because we're only going to have 2. So 2 campuses next year. We have 10 students at Valley Forge who request advanced biology, 10 students at Normandy who request advanced biology. We're not going to run it for 10 and 10 because it's not fiscally responsible. That's a section that's teachers dedicating 1/6 of their schedule to. But if you put that on the same campus, now you have 20, and now you're running that class. Same thing with College Credit Plus. We may have a teacher next year at Normandy who is able to teach College Credit Plus English right there at Normandy. But because that's sort of an additional certification and you need a certain amount of hours in your content area beyond a master's, we may not have that same qualification at Valley Forge. And so now the students at Normandy can take it. Students at Valley Forge are not able to. 17 career tech pathways in one campus, a phenomenal advantage. A, we do career tech extremely well, but B, right now when students schedule, they will have a down period where they have to travel to the other campus. Or they may have to eat lunch at a campus they don't want to because that's not their home school. 17 career tech pathways all in one campus eliminates that need to have some type of sort of rigged schedule to make sure that we can get that pathway in. Extracurricular diversity. We want to be able to continue to offer as many assets as possible, as many opportunities for our kids. One of the advantages is you don't necessarily need 3 student councils. So maybe you have 1 student council, you save some money by not having a third supplemental, and that second supplemental turns into some type of gaming club, just as an example. We would obviously work with our students and our teachers to see what the interest levels are, but the advantage is that we can have a lot more diversity in terms of what we're able to offer. Athletic program strength, and here's what we mean by that. Right now, we struggle, especially at the freshman and JV levels. We can usually field varsity teams. They're not as competitive as we want them to be, but a part of that is because our students haven't had the chance to grow through a program. We should have a robust freshman team. We should have a strong JV team, and then from that feeds into a varsity team that's very competitive. Right now, honestly, sometimes we're borrowing kids who played on Friday night to come down and play again on Saturday morning just so we can fill a JV team. As a football example, for instance, or we don't even have a freshman team. So we want to make sure that we are going to have really the same number of opportunities, but we think they should be higher quality because the reality is we can develop these feeder programs where students learn at the freshman level, learn at the JV level, and then matriculate to the varsity level. As I said before, our new high school, we want to make sure that they are community assets as well. Performing Arts Center, instead of the auditoriums we have now, which are not bad auditoriums. I don't want to malign what we have, but a Performing Arts Center, and this is Berea's right here, would be a more intimate performance area, much more in line with the acoustic updates that have happened over the last several decades. Gymnasium and pool. The gymnasium is actually based upon the number of students in the school. So at a 3,000 student capacity of what we're looking at, the gymnasium area is going to be plentiful, and again, that's something we want to share. We will have a pool. We're committed to that. We certainly would not want to build a high school that has less assets than what we have right now. Career technical education classrooms, we want to avail those to our community. We want folks to be able to come in and take classes and certifications. So we work with Tri-C now, in all honesty. Sometimes our facilities are limited. We want to make sure that we have the best and that we can have continuing education right here on our campuses. Media Center would also sort of double as a community center, so folks would be able to access that for different meetings that they would want to have. We would also have, in partnership with Tri-C, a STEM lab, at least one actually, and Tri-C would help us to have really a cutting-edge STEM lab that, again, can be accessed to the community at various times as well. Our facilities are your assets. We've really worked to try to maximize that. In fact, last Thursday, we just had an open gym and swim. We appreciate the families that came. That's just one example of us trying to say, we know that you pay your taxes, and we are grateful for that, and we want to make sure that in addition to just that education between the hours of 8 and 4, we are more than that, and we are open to the community. Busing for high school students, that has continually been asked, and so yes, busing for grades 9 through 12 will resume next year. That's for students who have 2,000, that'd be a really big school district. That's for students who travel 2 miles or more. Again, our consolidation plan next year is Normandy and Valley Forge, and our hope is that in 2025-26, we have chosen and committed to building our future, and that is one campus, one senior high school campus right here at the site of Parma Senior High. Another piece about money, because some folks have said, and in fact I just got this at the Community Resource Fair, what's wrong with your schools now? Why can't you just use the schools you have? Well, this was a 2019 estimate of how much money it would take to actually renovate our schools. And this is just in terms of keeping them warm, safe, and dry. This is not really, the upgrades and some of the updates that we talked about earlier and really making our schools 21st century environments. This is specific to warm, safe, and dry repairs and renovations. Normandy has a $43 million price tag. Valley Forge has a $60 million price tag. So you're talking about above $100 million simply to renovate. And again, that does not give students the advantages, teachers the advantages that we're talking about. The state would contribute nothing to that. Our schools are above the 66% threshold, which means that it would cost more than 66% to renovate versus just rebuilding. And so the state provides nothing. On the other hand, we've got a $237.5 million price tag for the new campus that we've tried to broadcast throughout our communities. State contribution for that, $71.9 million. So a big difference in terms of the state participating. And again, in terms of the high schools that we have right now, could we make them work? We could, but the reality is you're looking at a pretty expensive price tag to do nothing more than keep them warm, safe, and dry. You mentioned this already. Okay, so we are going to take questions now. Ms. Popick has been monitoring our Facebook Live. Do I need to?
Yes, we have our first question.
Okay.
This says, correct me if I'm wrong, with this being a bond issue, can you not decide we're not paying back fast enough and change the amount of the payment, increasing our cost? So we say it's $11.53 now, but in 5 years it could move to $40 and so on.
No, we could not increase your cost without coming back to you for approval of that. So that would have to be a bond issue again or some type of change. But we cannot increase your taxes without your okay, and that's statutory. That's been decided that. House Bill 920 in the 70s had a big piece in that, but we cannot simply say, oh, we're going to start to collect X. That's not possible in the state of Ohio.
The next question is, how are you going to address the busing for kids from over multiple cities? How are you going to pay for additional busing, bus drivers, maintenance, and fuels for them? Has there been a pricing exercise to have the existing buildings retrofitted and remodeled? All the things you are speaking out during this meeting can be added to existing buildings. How are you going to address the multiple football teams? Voters have turned this down multiple times. Haven't someone figured out the residents don't want this? Additional property tax haven't been voted for in the past. What happens to the properties that are demoed from buildings?
Do you want to start with, I'm having a hard time remembering all this.
Yeah, so we'll start at the beginning. How are you going to address the busing for the kids from over multiple cities? How are you going to pay for additional busing, bus drivers, maintenance, and fuel for them?
So we actually did a piece on that. It's on YouTube, and you can watch that. It's about a 9-minute video, which is why we didn't make it a piece of this meeting. But the busing has been figured into our really estimates of what we will save in consolidation. We've budgeted approximately an extra $500,000 for increased driver hours, increased fuel as well. So that has been a pricing exercise that we've gone through. We're also looking at, and we haven't locked this in, but we're looking at different times, because it's very possible that if we spread our start times out slightly, we would be able to actually not add as much in terms of transportation. Right now our high school and our middle school really kind of start right on top of each other, so that's an activity that we're going through as well. Again, nothing to specifically provide with that, but if we can come to an estimate that makes a lot of sense for us and isn't too much of a burden on our teaching staff or our parents or our students, then that is a potential. What else? I know there were a number of questions there.
Yeah, and I don't know that people can necessarily hear me, so if you could just maybe repeat a little bit of the question. Has there been a pricing exercise to have the existing buildings retrofitted and remodeled? All the things you're speaking about in this meeting can be added to existing buildings.
So she asked if there's been a pricing exercise for current buildings, and yes, there has. In fact, that's what we showed in terms of the Normandy and Valley Forge being $103 million. We can put that probably already is online at our Building Our Future, because each building has its own cost in terms of what that would cost. That was the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. They provided estimates in, I think, 2019. So we have that information. And again, just for Normandy and Valley Forge, it was a $103 million price tag.
It says, hasn't someone figured out that the residents don't want this? Additional property taxes haven't been voted on in the past, but what happens to the properties that are being demoed from the buildings?
So the first part, in terms of how haven't people figured this out that nobody wants this? Obviously we're hopeful that we have a different plan this time. We went through a different process, used a different process to get to the plan that we're asking people to support. So we're very hopeful that the one high school plan is more popular than the two secondary campus models. We also have a much lower price ask this time. We're at 3.95 mils. Last time we were at 6.3 and 6.5 mils respectively in fall of 20 and then spring of 21. Actually, those two were reversed, but I digress. So again, we're hopeful that people will see the need. If you think about, all of the communities in our surrounding area, we're at our youngest buildings at 54 years. That is not true in any of our surrounding districts. So I'm really hopeful that our residents of Parma and Parma Heights and Seven Hills see fit to take that next step in terms of investment in our kids and investment in our community. Second part of that was remaining buildings. We will demolish Parma Senior High. We will demolish Wrenwood. Those are plans that we're already starting to move forward with. We have not signed any contracts, so we don't have specific prices, but we are working with different contractors to talk about the cost of moving furniture out and then demolition. We also have Parma Park, which we will convert into our central office, as well as some of the programs we have. ACES, for instance, will move over to Parma Park. Page, which is our Parma Academy of Gifted Enrichment, would also be a Parma Park. So those are conversations we are having. And again, we would move forward with demolition.
Can the sale of the properties pay for the new idea?
Not even close. Not even close. I mean, we're estimating. Let's just take State Road, for instance. We got approximately $630,000 for State Road, and that's a pretty nice location right on State Road. Now, obviously, it's smaller than the others, but you can multiply up if you want to. Parma High, even if it's 10 times the size of State Road, which is probably a decent estimate, so you're at $6 million, it's not going to come close to paying for a $237.5 million property.
No one has ever answered my questions, and I have many more questions. You just say what the costs are, just to keep it warm, safe, and dry. What happened to all the monies you've had already to do this?
It's exactly what we've been using our permanent improvement money. We get each year we get approximately $5.1 million in permanent improvement, and honestly, over a 15 campus portfolio that we have right now, that money goes pretty quickly in terms of just things like roof repairs and HVAC, just not really changing it or not air conditioning buildings, but simply making sure that we're pumping air through buildings, our plumbing, et cetera, pavements, all those things. So we have maintained our buildings, but in terms of really upgrading and renovating them to make sure that they're safe for the long term instead of just putting Band-Aids on the problems, which is what we do now, $5.1 million is certainly not sufficient for that type of purpose. Again, the OFCC estimates $103 million for Normandy and Valley Forge.
I'm just saying that if you have more questions, you can email our
Okay.
issue questions. There is nothing on here.
Nothing else? Well, we appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully, this gets some viewership over Facebook Live. Please, again, we want to give you as much information as possible. Email us at bondissuequestions@parmacityschools.org, and we look forward to answering them as we move ahead toward Election Day, which is now only 3 weeks away. Remember to vote either today, tomorrow, or any day between now and November 8th. Thank you, and have a great night.